When was the last time you read a car review and realized halfway through it sounded like an ad? Today, we're peeling back the curtain on automotive journalism and exposing the biases most people never even notice.
Feel the rhythm, let it glide. Vehicular verses, fuel the ride. Vehicular verses, fuel the ride.
Before we get too far into it, what is automotive journalism? It's the practice of reporting on and writing about the automotive industry, including new car models, trends, and events. Conventional journalism strives to avoid bias because credibility, public trust, and democracy itself depend on fair and accurate reporting, not hidden agendas or personal opinions. And that's really what bias is. It's an opinion. It can be political, financial, emotional, or personal. And conventional journalists are encouraged to avoid bias as much as possible because their core mission is to inform the public truthfully, accurately, and fairly. Bias undermines credibility and distorts truth. In automotive media, a little bias can make the experience more passionate, more relatable, and more human. Much akin to sports announcers, automotive journalists sometimes have their favorite teams and players, except with an automotive journalist, those teams might be automakers, and the players might either be the cars or maybe a race car driver. Essentially, personality is the product when it comes to automotive journalism. Viewers come for the personality just as much as the information. What would Jeremy Clarkson be without his disdain for Teslas and hybrids and his love for the Lexus LFA and maybe the occasional jab at the owners of a Jaguar?
But the sort of person who would go away for a weekend with his wife to a hotel, some romantic place, and spend the entire night flirting outrageously with a waitress, and it's okay because he's got a yeah.
Similarly, what would Doug DeMuro be without his distaste for the Lexus LFA or his appreciation for the Prius?
You know what car I think is overhated? Two of them are right here in the office.
A Prius?
The '04 Prius, I think, is overhated. It was a tremendous car.
Why does anybody hate that car?
It is a tremendous car. It was great in so many ways.
I think that regular people love it.
Speaking of Doug, let's see what he has to say about bias in automotive journalism.
This is a good one that I want you to really think about. From Speedsta, what cars would get better or worse driving experience reviews if journalists could not tell what make or model they were driving? I love this question because it assumes that journalists have massive biases, and they do. Some of the stuff I have heard my fellow car journalists say, especially at launch events, I am absolutely astonished by.
If they can't tell which automaker it is, they can't tell, is that the automaker that's sponsoring us for Performance Car of the Year this year?
Oh my God.
I'm joking about it. I'm joking. I'm joking about the specificity.
I don't think it's that specific, but I do think there are individual journalists who are predisposed to like certain brands.
Automotive journalists, like most car enthusiasts, often have very opinionated views on auto brands or even the segments such as cars, trucks, sports cars, electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, gasoline-powered vehicles, diesel vehicles, turbocharged vehicles, supercharged vehicles, four-cylinder vehicles, V8 vehicles, so on and so forth. But much of the bias in automotive journalism actually is due to the automakers.
Does Ferrari drive better than McLaren and Lamborghini? If you covered up the everything, would it? I don't know, but we all know what happens if you say bad things about Ferrari.
Exactly.
Unlike conventional journalism, where independence from sources is critical, automotive journalism often relies on maintaining friendly relationships with the very companies they're covering, making true objectivity much harder to achieve. There's a large financial dependence on automakers because they can restrict access to vehicles, press events, and even advertising dollars. So there's a lot of pressure to play nice because of that. And beyond all that, maybe an automotive journalist has their own culture bias. They also have to cater to audience expectations. And at the press events, they're really PR scripted experiences. The automaker will supply a higher trim model that might have a lot more options that the entry-level consumer isn't going to see on the base model cars. Beyond that, there's also perfect weather days chosen, scenic routes, and it really creates a shaped narrative. Despite the challenges, many automotive journalists are actually finding ways to put honesty first, from disclosing industry ties to independently testing vehicles outside the PR machine. Independent testers are starting to rent, buy, or borrow cars and put them through real-world conditions. And of course, there are still critical reviews despite risks. Doug DeMuro calls out weird flaws, and that's part of his personality. Let's take a look at the abstract of this dissertation by Chris DeRosier. He mentions that most consumers do not use journalistic reviews or automotive journalism of any kind. In his thesis titled Reader Perception of the Usefulness and Credibility of Journalistic Automotive Reviews, he goes on to say, if the automakers and dealerships can hold both access and a revenue stream over reviewers' heads, how much can car shoppers have faith in the veracity of the help reviewers are giving them? And now, a word from our sponsor. Just kidding. There's no sponsorships, just a bunch of student debt, a passion for cars, and a love for writing. But it seems like a perfect moment to take a closer look at the rhetorical strategies used by the aforementioned writer Chris DeRosier. That excerpt I just read you is a great example of how DeRosier uses ethos and pathos together. He frames himself as a thoughtful observer, but he's also tugging on the audience's instinct to distrust corporate influence. That rhetorical choice helps establish him as credible because he's highlighting the potential lack of credibility in others. DeRosier sets out to answer two key questions: why car buyers choose certain sources over others, and how credible they perceive journalistic automotive reviews to be. He acknowledges up front that bias is unavoidable, even his own. Quote, the researcher conducted this study with the awareness of his extensive personal background as an automotive enthusiast. He acknowledges the possible effect that personal background may have on the design or process of this research, as well as on its results and interpretations. Now, that's interesting. An admission of bias in a paper about bias. So is that ethos or a deflection or both? Well, let's break it down. DeRosier's thesis leans heavily on rhetorical appeals to ethos and logos. For example, he reinforces his credibility by citing trusted industry names like Consumer Reports and referencing specific testing standards. The New York Times requires its car reviewers to pay market rent value for the car reviewed and to return it promptly at the review's completion. This emphasis on ethics and transparency builds trust. It also raises the bar. Is every automotive journalist held to that standard? So, while DeRosier's bias might be acknowledged, it doesn't discredit the work. If anything, it illustrates the very tension he's exploring: credibility and trust in a space where subjectivity and expertise are tangled up like jumper cables. His research doesn't just critique auto journalism, it exposes how our personal connections to cars, to writers, even to brands, influence the way we perceive what's objective in the first place. So, why do automotive journalists exist? Or do they even exist? Are they going out of style? Are they going extinct? Well, they have experience, and there's a demand for that experience. They also provide storytelling about culture, technology, as well as identity. Furthermore, they kind of watch the industry. They help hold manufacturers accountable for things like marketing claims, safety procedures, and reliability. And of course, entertainment. Audiences dream about supercars, laugh at quirks, or daydream about road trips. Essentially, automotive journalists fuel imagination and enthusiasm. So, how do they become one? Well, there's actually a lot of ways. They might have a journalism background in conventional journalism, usually some sort of English degree. Maybe they were industry insiders turned writers. And these, in my opinion, are some of the most valuable automotive journalists that we have available to us. They have a ton of knowledge about what goes on behind closed doors, and they can explain how and why you get the end product that you do. Also, of course, there are enthusiasts turned writers. This is kind of where I fit in. I would really love to be an automotive journalist. That's my goal right now. I'm a student at ASU, nearing the end somewhat of a degree in English, and I've always been an enthusiast, an automotive enthusiast. I've loved cars since I was a little kid when I had Hot Wheels and all those automotive toys. I dreamed about being a race car driver. I still dream about being a race car driver. I've been in one race. It was a very grassroots type of event called Hoopty Cross, where you go out and you kind of just beat up your hoopty on a dirt track. Maybe mine wasn't so much of a hoopty, but I had a great time. I met a lot of like-minded people, and it really rekindled my passion for my dream. I've worked tradesman jobs most of my life. I've worked on cars professionally as well as a hobby. And I've done auto body at a restoration company. That was a whole lot of fun. I got to work on old Toyota Land Cruisers. I've also done car audio, and I've owned a lot of different cars, and I really learned a lot about how to work on really anything powered, anything with an engine, at Wyotech in Daytona Beach, Florida. I learned how to work on boats. That wasn't really my dream, but it was 2008. We were just hitting a recession, and the automotive industry was very questionable. But I figured, hey, boats have been around for thousands of years, so that's secure, right? So I did that for a little while, and then kind of gravitated back towards cars. I've worked a lot of odd jobs, and then finally went back to college. Now here we are. And I try not to hold too much bias when it comes to automobiles. I don't really care what the badge says, right? It doesn't matter to me what emblem is on a car, as long as it's fun to drive, which they all are if you do it right. Every manufacturer has its good cars and bad cars, things they do well, things they don't do so well at. Maybe I can get into that in a future video. I do plan on posting some footage that I'm hoping to get. I'll be volunteering at a race next weekend here, not too far from me, and really looking forward to networking with some people and being around some cool cars. Anyways, enough about me. Let's take a look at an editorial. This is a letter to the editor from another editor. William Vantuono of Railway Age magazine went on the defensive after American Motorsports racing driver and journalist Patrick Bedard of Car and Driver proposed more highways and bashed public transportation. His article was titled, "Take the Car or Hop a Choo-Choo?" In his letter, Vantuono points out that the logic behind Bedard's argument is really based on information from an organization called Reason Foundation, which is heavily funded by Exxon, General Motors, and several other large corporations with vested interest in selling either automobiles or gasoline. And of course, this is a prime example of when bias in automotive journalism is bad. And Vantuono is absolutely right to tell Bedard to stick to writing about cars. The automotive journalist is necessary to fuel conversations about what drives us, whether it's in a magazine, a podcast, a TV show like Top Gear. I may have a little bias there towards the one on BBC. Or a social media platform like YouTube. Their passion and even their bias are what make their work resonate. What matters most is matching the media to your needs. If you're shopping for a car, look for sources that don't depend on automaker access, like Consumer Reports. They are a nonprofit that tests vehicles independently. But if you're here for the thrill, the culture, the personality, that's where automotive journalists truly shine. If you enjoyed the video, please consider hitting the like button, dropping a comment, and subscribing. It would really help me out a lot, especially since I'm just getting started. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you see bias in the automotive world, and it would give you the opportunity to keep a close eye on this channel. I do plan on getting a little bit more comfortable in front of the camera, maybe getting away from the flashcards and script, and really share with you guys a lot more stuff of what I find interesting. And as promised, here's a little bonus. This is a few fun auto moments I've been lucky enough to capture or be part of. Thanks for watching.
Whispers in the wind, they flee. Neon skies call out to me. Wheels that spin through endless night, chasing roads of electric light.